to talk about a topic that is not just one of the most important for us today, but also something that I personally have been struggling with over the last couple of days. And I just wanted to share because it was something that it's vulnerable for me because it's right here in the moment, but it also is something that I know is, again, one of the most important things that we can address, especially when we're looking at our businesses, when we're looking at our families, when we're looking at our kids. How often does pride and ego get in the way of us actually being able to give our children the best solutions and the best path forward? And I'm so grateful for watching, particularly my sister. I've just been so amazed at the way she parents. She, from the very beginning, kind of invited the family to come around her and speak into her daughter's life. And she just welcomed feedback and welcomed input. And she wasn't attached to how her daughter behaved as a reflection of her. And to that point, I have really recently, I've seen how the way my business is running or operating, I have viewed as a reflection of me. And we actually hear that. We actually hear people say our external life and what we're doing is so often a reflection of where we're weak. And here's the thing is that it's actually kind of true. And so there's an aspect where it's been feeling kind of chaotic in my business. Yet I have likewise been feeling rather chaotic myself. And so when I go into the business, I have been feeling not at peace because I honestly, I was traveling for 2 weeks in July and then traveled the last week to meet with a client and then working remote in August. So I've been gone a lot during the time of onboarding now for new people. And so there's just been this tension in a really good way, but in a way that's probably been unnecessary had I not been traveling. And so as a result, I was actually talking with someone the other day, very, very successful in business, and they held up a mirror for me. And it was one of those moments where I knew that what they were saying was right. And they were so kind, yet my ego was the thing getting hurt by what they were saying. And it was my ego that was actually being confronted, not simply being curious around the health of the business. And so just as my sister could parent her daughter and welcome feedback because she had an ability to view her daughter as a separate entity, as this human being and this precious person that needs all the love and support that they can get, I was looking at my business as something, a reflection of me, something that I was associating my identity with in a sense. And so when somebody was coming in and looking at the business and saying, oh, this needs to be fixed, that needs to be fixed, I was hearing it as I need to be fixed. And there are elements where, yes, I do need to grow in these ways, yet do I have the humility to kind of remove myself from the ability to have my identity tied to the business? And for so long as our identity is tied to something that is external and something that we actually cannot control, parents cannot control their children to the extent of really having systemic change in behavior. Maybe if they beat them enough, that could do it, but that's not the point. The point isn't to fit square pegs into round holes. It's to figure out the systems and the ways of existing together in peace to allow for the child to flourish, to allow for the right amount of discipline that helps, like kind of like when you're helping the horse go in the right direction. You know, I love the analogy, even in business, where I like to kind of exist with blinders on so that I'm not getting distracted by what everybody else is doing. The blinders themselves are a form of discipline. Our habits are discipline. And so if we are willing to exist with and around discipline to help kind of curb ego, part of that discipline is learning how to look at the business or look at the child or look at our family and consider what is best for them. And then, okay, then how do I actually need to change to get them to that point? It's the reverse engineer effect. And guys, it's the same way for us internally. It's who do I want to be? What am I called to do? Having clarity of the vision to which I feel called to then be able to reverse engineer and say, okay, well, I need to become that person in order to get me to that place. So when we think about, well, what is the antidote to pride? How do we actually overcome pride? There's something about having a vision that's big enough that pulls us out of pride and out of ego to be willing to change, to allow for the excitement and the passion to be stirred as a result of having a bigger dream than where we are here in this present moment. And so The other night, I had this kind of squaring off with myself over how I'm running the business and how I really do fundamentally need to change my lifestyle if I want to see business results that are different. And so I actually need to be honest with myself and asking that question of, am I willing to change the way that I'm investing in relationships? Maybe even how much I'm giving to writing my book and trying to build this knowing movement and something that really is a passion for me and something that I do feel called to. What something's got to give. And so for every single one of us, when we feel our pride be kind of instigated, when we feel that reaction, that means that there's something for us to listen to, and there's data for us. Every single emotional reaction holds data. I like to think of it as when we have this emotion, and I didn't know this for 28 years of my life. I learned that emotion holds data to the point that it's an automatic sensation. We actually cannot control it. But our feelings are the thoughts about our emotions. So it's only when we start giving into the emotion that we start forming feelings about it. And then we start having all these negative feelings associated with the past or associated with a person or an experience because we didn't just allow the emotion to come up, listen to what the data had to say, and then move forward from there. So when pride comes up, that's an emotion. There's something in there for us to learn from. And a lot of times pride can actually be the thing that reveals our values. So it's not to be shamed, but it does need to have a voice to be able to allow for us to then make the right decision on what am I going to do next? What is actually going to be the right next step? Because when pride flares, it means that there's something that we need to listen to. And so one of the best antidotes I've ever found to pride is actually gratitude, to allow for me to actually focus on how good it is in this moment and how grateful I am, because maybe I was actually set up in a really beautiful way by a friend or somebody helped me to get to this point. And so to be able to exist in a place of gratitude, suddenly we realize how much we have received and how much has been given to us. We didn't choose the family we grew up in. And maybe you don't like your family. Well, maybe you didn't choose where you literally lived in the world. Maybe you don't like where you live. So we can always go back and forth with that concept of we have been given so much. There's so much that we have received. And we could look at the negatives of it. Yet if we choose the lens through which we engage with the world and we choose to see the beauty, there is always beauty to be found. But if we are looking for the negative, we will surely find that too. So if we actually want to move ourselves out of pride, gratitude is one of the best ways to do that, because what it does is that it positions us from being the one who has earned everything, who is the one that is kind of the top dog in our life, to actually sitting and existing aware of everybody else and feeling that sense of gratitude of, look at how big this world is, that I get to be here, that I get to be a participant. I'm so grateful for that barista bringing me coffee. I'm so grateful for this car that I'm driving. I'm so grateful for gasoline. If I had been born 200 years ago, that would not be the case. Guys, we have so much. I was watching the movie Young Washington. For those of you who are in the States, we had our 250th country anniversary. We were very young, or birthday. And I was watching this film called Young Washington about young George Washington, and he was the first president of the United States. And he was such a young man. And it really was not that long ago, 250 years. That's a drop in the bucket when you look back at all of history. And we could have easily existed back then, where there's just been so much technological change and advancement. Y'all, we have so much to be grateful for. And if we choose to look at the world through that lens, pride fundamentally cannot exist in that vein where we're putting people down or judging them harshly, or worse still, judging ourselves. Because if we're existing in that place towards ourselves, that's usually actually the real systemic issue. It's how are we fundamentally viewing ourselves? And then once that's adjusted and tweaked, then we can start looking at others from a lens of gratitude. Just jumping here in the chat, Marty Garcia, good to see you. Christopher Adams. I love this. When you speak of pride, I think you're referring more to hubris in contrast to a sense of accomplishment. Think about it. You build something and say, look what I did. That's hubris. It's interesting. I think that to your point, in terms of what pride is, there's a shadow and a light to everything. For so great often is the shadow, so much greater is the light, and vice versa. So it's, if we've got something really good, there's a high chance that there's probably something a little bit shadowy about it that we just have to be mindful of. And so, to your point, if we're pointing to that achievement and accomplishment and we're like, look at that, there's something actually really honorable, give honor where honor's due. But man, if our pride or accomplishment is actually causing a separation where we're not able to see people as they truly are, where we're starting to see ourselves as better than them, or we can't hear feedback, that's when we start getting into dangerous waters. What comes up for us when somebody holds up a mirror to us and we start seeing ourselves? That's the kind of pride that I'm talking about. It's the resistance. It's like, I actually had someone tell me once, she had her husband tell her something that was really, really hard to hear. And she came to me and she said, I never understood what you meant about looking in the mirror until now. She finally understood that pain that you feel when you realize how you've been living and how you've been impacting other people and how your actions have really been, man, a driver to kind of like some parts of our life that are maybe getting desolate. It's so much easier to point the finger, but when we suddenly turn it around and see all the other fingers pointing at ourselves and we're like, oh, I had no idea. Sometimes we really don't know. So are we humble enough to hear what other people have to say? And I was reminded of that lesson last night. Another thing that pride shows us, so it shows us a lot of times what we value, but it really comes to show us the things that we prize. It shows us maybe even a dream that we had. Last night, I actually did not realize how much of a dream is held around business for me. I've always been taught that it's better to prioritize relationships and prioritize people rather than business. And so I've never really gone hard in the business and really tried. There's some, I think, guilt associated with it. But then at the thought last night of giving up the business, I just had this moment where I just felt so humiliated that I couldn't do it. And that was a mirror for me. Oh, you know what? I actually really value this. I really love it. I really actually do want to try. And so that for me was really important to recognize that. So pride, every single emotion, but pride especially, it holds wisdom for us. It holds data. It holds things for us to learn about ourselves, about the world. Kanish, hello. Good to see you. George, thank you for joining. Alexander, bonjour from France. Hello. Wayne, hello from London. I'm so glad you're here. Paxton, oh, I'm so happy to see your name. Marty, Dev Channel, hello. DJ Sky, hello. I love this. Be a light to the world and salt to the earth. Riddy, hello. Thank you. Thanks for joining. Joa, hello. Blood, good to see you. Brad, hello. Izzy, DJ says, I want cheese. Same. Dean Harvey, hello. Memento, good to see you. Athis, hello. Kanish, hello. Oliver, good to see you. Merster, hello. Marty says, I was never reprimanded as a child. Interesting. I'd be curious, Marty, if you found that was good for you. Like, was that helpful for you? Or, we were talking about discipline and how it's kind of like a horse that has blinders on. That's a form of discipline because it keeps them focused on where they're going, or daily habits is a form of discipline. But discipline has such a negative connotation to it, where really, there's actually this biblical concept where it says the boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Indeed, I have a beautiful inheritance. And I love that concept because boundaries so often are used as a form of punishment, perhaps, rather than it's almost like I'm going to hedge you in or hedge me in so that in this confined space is fullness of life and joy and experience. But man, if you start going and putting your hand on a hot stove, you're actually going to get hurt. So it's like, come play in this place and it's going to be amazing. Just scrolling down. Wayne, hi. I'm glad to see you. He says, I think there's a better way besides using fear. I completely agree. I completely agree. And it's interesting. It's how can we actually have boundaries powered by love rather than fear? And I think it starts with us. Like if we're trying to rear our children or even bring it into business, am I actually bringing these boundaries from a place of fear, being afraid of what could happen or being afraid of what might not work out or, kind of all the what ifs rather than from a deep conviction that this is the right way to do things or from a deep conviction that this is something that I value or care about or I have a vision for what could be possible if we exist within these boundaries. That's a completely different powering source for the operating system that we put in place. And every family has an operating system. Every business has an operating system. Our very lives have an operating system. It's just a question of whether we put it in place or whether we inherited it by our parents or somebody else gave it to us or we saw it modeled for us and we just kind of are subconsciously adhering to that. Lord 100, good to see you. Nika, I'm glad you're here. Hello. Grizzly Bexar, I love it. I hope you do. I hope you'll come hang out with us. Scott, good to see you. Robert, hello. Grizzly Bexar says, can I get your opinion on self-awareness? I think, first, I'd love to hear your opinion on it. And I'd love to hear even your definition. When someone says self-awareness, we were talking about this. With every great light, there is an equally great shadow so often. So if we're talking about self-awareness, there's, I think, the light version of that, and then there's the shadow. And, self-awareness actually is the very first step to becoming emotionally intelligent. The right hemisphere of the brain is where our emotions lie. It's where creativity lies. It's where nurturing and love abound. And then in the left hemisphere, it's organization and structure, logical thinking, and we need both activated. But if we're looking at the definition of emotional intelligence, it is the ability to become aware of, understand, convey, and around emotion. So be aware of, understand, and convey one's own emotions. And then it's the ability to handle interpersonal relationships with empathy and with wisdom. All of that, relationships, to convey our own emotions, all of that starts with being aware. But I've seen in the shadow of it is where we become self-consumed and self-obsessed, where we actually cannot engage with empathy because we haven't moved to that part of the process yet. Empathy protects us from narcissism. Narcissism, that's the extreme, but that awareness piece. So it's kind of like, think of it on like a linear line, right? So you've got maybe narcissism on one end where you're fully obsessed with yourself. And then you've got codependence on the other end where you're just not even a human being, like you're not a person. Well, empathy protects us from narcissism. And then you've got this kind of awareness and authenticity that protects us from codependence. It helps us to be a person while in relationship. So often people will forsake themselves to be in relationship and then they can't stand it anymore. And then they reject the relationship and leave it. And it's like, well, maybe don't abandon yourself to begin with. And frankly, that was very much so my experience in my 20s. I didn't grow up knowing who I was or having any kind of relationship. And so codependence was my MO for the majority of my life until when you come face to face with, I think, devastation or your dreams falling apart, you are faced with this crossroads moment where it's like, okay, I'm going to look at the truth and change, or I'm going to keep burying my head in the sand and blame everybody else. And so I chose the wake up to the truth road, and it was not pleasant, but it helped me, man. Now I feel like I actually really love my life and I live awake. And now I still have to be willing to see the truth, though, because if I want to continue on that path and continue on in that trajectory of creating a life that I love, I still need to be willing to see the truth that I hate, or the truth that I maybe even kind of despise. I didn't like what I saw the other night when I was looking in the mirror, looking at myself as it pertains to business. And I've actually known that this is an area I need to grow. I'm too attached to it. I've got insecurity around business. I for many reasons, and I don't need to get into it tonight, but man, I think that self-awareness is actually the first step to really knowing who we are. But it also has the shadow that can be the very thing that prevents relationship. So we have to be really careful with self-awareness. And relationship itself can actually be kind of the buffer that helps us engage in a healthy way with ourselves. Xavier, hello. I'm glad to see you. Blood. Thank you. Mr. Harry Potter, what original nationality? My family is from, you said German. Yes. I've got my dad's side was very German, is very German. My mom's side is very English and Pennsylvania Dutch. So good question. But you said Spanish. I've gotten that before too. Lord 100, where are you from? I grew up in Maryland. So I hail from the mid-Atlantic in the US. Where are you guys from? I'd love to know. If you guys don't mind dropping it here in the chat, it would be fun to see where everyone's from. James, hello. I'm glad to see you. Joa, hello. Dob, hello. Wayne says, my operating system needs tweaking. Michael Jameson, hello. I'm glad to see you. As a kid, I never understood the difference between discipline and abuse. Oh, chills. Wow. I thought I was being disciplined by my parents for bad behavior without realizing they were abusing me, especially because they made me feel like the worst living thing on the earth. Oh my gosh. Michael, I'm so sorry. How have you kind of reconciled your relationship with yourself after that? There's something that it's like you kind of start to hate who you are in some ways, or you really resent it. Like, that that's not true. And you resent that information. You're like, I reject that information. I just wonder, and I'm sure that there's many other reactions you could have. And I just wonder how you're doing. That's so, 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 so painful. I'm so sorry, my friend. And I appreciate you sharing that. For those of you who are on YouTube, Michael joined us on Facebook and shared that comment. And I just really appreciate that. And Michael, we'd love to have you come over and join us on YouTube anytime you'd like. It's the Knowing Podcast on YouTube. Dr. Mitch, hello. I'm glad to see you. Oh, Grizzly Bear. I'm sorry. I added the X in there. John's Day, selfishness. Yeah, like we were talking about with awareness, like it can err on the side of selfishness in terms of the shadow and what that can look like, where life's all about you because you're so aware of you and your problems and feelings. But empathy is the very thing that balances it out so that you can be living with an awareness of how you're doing and an awareness of others. It's self and others awareness. Otherwise, it can be a really dangerous road and really kill off the relationships that are close to us if we don't know that balance. DJ, why pearls? Because they're so fun. I love that you asked that. That's so funny. Finding myself brought awareness. It can be overwhelming. I'd love to hear more about that if you're willing. Nika, I started writing a book, maybe some editions in English also. Would you be interested to send you a PDF once it's done? I would love to read that. Oh my gosh, yes. That would be wonderful. Congratulations, Nika. Writing a book. I mean, I guess with AI, I don't know if you used AI. AI, I think, changes everything, but it took me 4 years, 3.5 years to write my book. Oh my gosh. Just looking through here. G major, hello. Bilal, Hello, I feel narcissism is the exact opposite of empathy. That's such a good way to put it. Mm. Um, wow. Michael says it took me a long time for me to realize I was raised by a narcissist. I do wonder, there's something freeing around when you kind of wake up. So, M. Joel Nears says awake. Like, I like that concept of waking up because I feel like now that I've been on the other side of quote unquote waking up, I just felt like I lived relatively asleep for so much of my life where I really was not, I didn't let myself feel anything. Anytime I had an emotion, I just completely shamed it. And I really did view emotions as weakness. Yet emotions are like the through line of our soul to then come forth and connect with the other parts of ourselves. Like on the Knowing Show, we talk about intellectual intelligence, physical intelligence, because our body holds data, it holds trauma, it remembers, it keeps the score. There's a book by Bessel van der Kolk about that. It's brilliant. So, intellectual intelligence, physical intelligence, spiritual intelligence, and emotional intelligence. And emotional, like being awake to our emotions, they are an automatic sensation. They are a natural outpouring of being a human being. So, for as long as we're silencing that, we're actually silencing what part of what makes us human. And so, in allowing for myself to even just square off with the truth, to feel the joy, but it was really once I allowed myself to really feel the pain, man, it was like now I could feel the joy too. And so if we're willing to let ourselves feel and experience the emotion, not letting it be in control of us, we still need to actually be the ones in the driver's seat of our lives, but still engaging with emotions and knowing how to do that. Man, it really feels like waking up. um, Y'all, I need to jump off. I'm sorry to have to go so soon, but I will be back on tomorrow, probably around the same time. And I'm excited to be with you all tomorrow. So have a wonderful rest of your day. I will see you tomorrow. Happy what's today? Happy Monday. I'll see you tomorrow. Talk soon, my friends. Oh, wait. Come join me on the Knowing Show. No, not the Knowing Show, the Knowing Community. I forgot. I'm doing terrible at promoting this thing. I'm just starting it, like truly just starting it. I think we've got like 6 members, and I would love to have you come over and join us. We're going to really like kick this thing off in 2 weeks. I'm traveling right now, but once I come back, we're really going to be kicking it off. So get in there while it's early. Would love to have you in there, and we'll be doing a lot more stuff. We're going to start having our monthly trivia in the community. We're going to start having Sunday gatherings where hopefully you guys will show up and have your cameras on. 363 English, good to see you. Riddy, thank you. Borat, thank you for joining. Blood, thank you for hanging out with us. Wayne, thank you for your note. I really appreciate you, my friend. Spiritual Alchemy, good to see you. I love it. Awakening is not changing who you are, but discarding who you are not. That's so good. Grizzly Bear, come hang out in the community. That's going to be the place. Michael, let me know if you want to join, and I'll go ahead and send you a link. But have a good night. I will see you tomorrow.